In cardiac rehab, just about everyone there has what's called coronary artery disease, which means cholesterol blockages in their arteries. And they come back to me and say, why don't you cardiologists invent a drug to dissolve cholesterol? And I tell them, I can't even imagine a drug like that. And let me tell you why. This is a cell in your body. Could be any cell. Liver cell, kidney cell, brain cell, stomach cell, even a hemorrhoid cell. And this is going to represent cholesterol. Every single cell in your body has a wall made of cholesterol. So if I gave you a drug to dissolve cholesterol, you would dissolve. Your bones would still be up because they're a mineral, calcium. Your flesh would be just a puddle on the floor. So don't ever take a drug to dissolve cholesterol, please. But the people who get heart disease, their problem isn't cholesterol. Their problem is they get cholesterol in the wrong place. It belongs in the walls of your cells, but they get it in the walls of their arteries. And let me tell you how that happens. Here's another artery blown up. Let's say this is one of the arteries in the heart that caused someone to have a heart attack because it got plugged up with cholesterol. Now, another screwy little aside for a minute. Did you ever hear that old saying, I work my fingers to the bone? Mm-hmm. Well, that would be literally true. By the time we hit our 20s, we would have stumps instead of fingers. Because every single thing we do with our hands involves death of finger cells. Every time you sign your name, you're killing 30 or 40 finger cells from the pressure of holding the pen. And your fingers don't get any shorter. Why? Because your body just makes more finger cells. Patients ask me if it's safe to give a blood donation. They're worried that they'll run out of blood. And I tell them, no, your body just makes more blood cells. Every time you eat a meal, your stomach acids dissolve the food. They also unavoidably dissolve a little bit of your own stomach. And your stomach never wears out because your body just makes more stomach cells. So our body's constantly making new cells to replace the dead and dying cells. But you can see that for any cell in our body to make a new cell, it's going to need a supply of cholesterol, because cholesterol is going to form the wall of the new cell. So there needs to be a way of delivering cholesterol to every cell in the body so that it could use it to build new cells. And the best way of delivering cholesterol, the best way of delivering anything to every cell in the body is through the bloodstream. And blood delivers oxygen, glucose, all the nutrients to every cell in the body through the bloodstream. Now there's a problem though with using the bloodstream to deliver cholesterol. The problem is that cholesterol is a fat or an oil, and blood is mostly water. You know from cooking, oil and water don't mix that well. So God, or nature, had to invent a way of delivering oily cholesterol in the watery bloodstream. And here's what God or nature came up with. These hollow marbles. They fill up with cholesterol and they just bobble along in the bloodstream and drop off cholesterol. Well, right now, I'm killing hundreds of finger cells, and you don't owe me any money for it, but I'm doing it gratis. But I'm killing hundreds of finger cells by grabbing this marker and writing, making drawings. So a bunch of these marbles are traveling right now up to my fingertips, and they're going to drop off cholesterol inside my fingertips. So my fingers can build new finger cells, and my fingers won't be shorter tomorrow because I gave this talk. Well, let me fill one of these marbles up with cholesterol. Let's see this one. Now, of course, this marble has to be open on one end so the cholesterol can flow in and out. And since it's open on one end, a little tail of cholesterol hangs out that opening. And every time that marble bumps into the wall, it leaves a little smudge of cholesterol. And over the years, after repeatedly bumping into the wall, the smudge will soak into the wall. But over 30 or 40 or 50 years, it'll keep building up and it'll start plugging up the artery. And that's how people's arteries get plugged up. But when I explain this to patients, sometimes they'll say, okay, doc, I understand that. But explain this to me. My next door neighbor, who's even older than I am, he just had a heart catheterization. And they said his arteries weren't blocked at all, and he's even older than I am. Why did that happen to me and not to him? The reason is this other marble. This other marble, well, I'll tell you, the bad one is called LDL, and you can keep them straight by thinking of L as lousy. The good one is called HDL, and again, you can keep them straight by thinking of H as healthy. You could also think of it as standing for Hoover vacuum, because this marble is like a dump truck, and it goes around and it vacuums up any leftover cholesterol. And the patients who get heart disease, it's because they were born with too many of the LDLs and not enough of the HDLs. Here's another way to think about this. If I'm building a house, I'll call a contractor, give him the plans, tell him where my lot is. The first thing he'll do is send out truckloads of building supplies and dump them on my lot. Bricks, lumber, pipes, and that's what LDL does. It's dropping off cholesterol inside my fingertips right now. Now, after my home is built, I'll want to landscape it, and I won't be able to because there'll be leftover building supplies laying around. So I'll call the contractor a second time, and he'll send out a dump truck to pick up the leftover building supplies. And that's what this HDL is going to do tonight. After my finger cells use up all the cholesterol, building enough new finger cells, if there's any left over, I'm hoping this HDL marble will go out and vacuum that up. But people who get heart disease are born with too many of those and not enough of those. And how many of each one you have, you inherit from your parents. That's why heart disease runs in families. Now, some families are lucky and they're born with very low levels of LDL and very high levels of HDL. Those folks can smoke 3 packs a day, eat ice cream 3 meals a day, and they'll never plug their arteries up. I hate them.
Can you reverse it through diet?
They don't deserve to live. Yes, you can, with a very rigid diet. Good question. Yeah, all this stuff, it depends partly on how much cholesterol you eat. And if you eat less, there'll be less cholesterol available to get your arteries plugged up.
So you have to be really disciplined
Yep.
and remove it if you're already predisposed
Yep.
to that.
Now here's a connection between diabetes and heart disease, because I didn't explain that yet. Looking at the ages of, some of you will remember the gas crisis in the 70s. You probably don't. You probably don't. There was a gas shortage, and cars were lined up at gas stations to buy gas. Well, I was lined up once, and it turns out the car in front of me got the last drop of gas. But back then, if you had a car that could run either on gasoline or diesel fuel, it would double your chances of getting fuel at a gas station. If they're out of one, you could fill up with the other. And our cells don't rely just on glucose. Our cells have an alternate energy source. Well, in fact, if they didn't have this alternate energy source, remember when the screwy thing I started, if we didn't have a second blood pressure number, we could only move each time our heart beat. Well, if we didn't have this second thing I'm about to explain, we could only move while we're eating. When we stop eating, no more fuel, we'd have to stop and wait till someone brought us food and we could move again. The reason we can move between meals is that our cells have an alternate energy source. They can also burn fat. And that's what gets us between meals. That's what gets us overnight. That's why we don't die overnight while we're not eating, because our cells will turn to burning fat. And that's why some of us, including me, because I'm still overweight, if I got lost in the woods, I could live for a couple of weeks off my fat. Even though I wouldn't be taking in any glucose, my cells would burn fat. Now, if you're diabetic and your cells are not getting all the glucose they need, they'll convert over to burning fat, but that means that you have a higher fat level in your bloodstream, because your blood has to deliver the fat to your cells. And that higher fat level in your bloodstream means there's more fat to get stuck onto these cholesterol blockages. That's a connection between diabetes and heart disease. Well, I think I covered this pretty well. Diet. For patients who have a high risk of having heart disease, well, let's say I smoke 3 packs a day, I'm diabetic, I don't take my insulin, I have high blood pressure, I don't take my blood pressure pills. In other words, I'm suicidal. I eat pizza, ice cream all day. When I see a cardiologist, he's going to say, I want to put you on a cholesterol drug. And the purpose of that is there's two sources of the cholesterol in our bloodstream. Part of it is diet, how much we eat. But in addition, since cholesterol is so important, it's one of the most important chemicals in our body because it forms the wall of every single cell in the body. Because it's so important, our livers make it. But God or nature didn't trust us thousands of years ago to get enough cholesterol every day, so our livers are programmed to make it. And the cholesterol pill tells your liver not to make it. So for people with heart disease, it's twofold treatment. One is diet, don't eat much cholesterol, but they also need a cholesterol pill to make sure their liver doesn't overproduce. Any questions on that?
One other thing you mentioned, you've told me before, once you've had a heart attack, you're going to have another one?
No.
A lot of this isn't reversible? Or
Well, yeah, that makes it sound too dire. People with heart disease who've had either a heart attack or a stroke or a stent or a bypass, chances are their cause of death is going to be another heart attack or stroke. Now, of course, they could get cancer and die. You can always die of something else. Or they could get hit by a bus and die from that. But if they live long enough, their most likely cause of death is going to be cardiovascular, heart attack, or stroke. So all those people are at increased risk the entire rest of their lives. So what cardiologists do for those patients, all of them, is to give them cholesterol pills, to put them on a low cholesterol diet, but insist that they take cholesterol medicine. And some of them choose not to, but we think they're making a mistake. No matter how low their cholesterol is,